We are so back. We are so here. Return of the Prodigal Son. Hello, Bookworm, Dude, Nikki, Wobbledopsy, Alekman, Ishmael, Messier, Ray. So many people, so many individuals. Welcome back. It's like I never left, right? Um, Maybe it's not. Maybe that's just not the case, and it's there's been intense craving for poetry analysis on Twitch that has been a need unfulfilled until this moment of return. um, but need yearn no longer, for I am here. Do you want to put a message on the board with your redeem? Happy birthday! It is my birthday. I might only be able to put uh a happy birthday. Oh, you want to refund your points? Okay. Well, that's okay. Lotus, you're back. You're no longer dead. I'm no longer dead, Messier. Isn't that amazing? I'm alive and well and breathing with a beating heart and these beady eyes, which look constantly for poetry and now will be fulfilled in their endless search, at least for a temporary moment. Uh, it's kind of nice though to have a break. I didn't write hardly anything in like the week and change while I was gone. I didn't read hardly anything. By that I mean I probably read like four poems during the trip, which is a lot less than I would normally read in a week, right? So it's good, and I'm just excited to be back because I genuinely am like craving reading poetry analysis. Obviously yesterday I put a video up on my YouTube and I was doing some of the YouTube video analysis from people over on that side of the internet. So I'm back and I'm excited. um, if you weren't a man, what else would you be? If you'd known, would you have come? I wish you'd have died before you were born. That's a crazy line. Mahmoud, my dear, why were you born? Why were any of us born? Isn't that the question? There's no why. That's my answer. I don't need to think of it much more than that. The why of things. It's all a choice that I get to make as a perceiver and a subjective experiencing being. Isn't that great? I will pick another day to make strangers wish you happy birthday, um, or on not your birthday. I can put it's my birthday on the board. Uh, I this is Geeked for Writing has been up for a long time too, so I definitely can put it up on the thing. Happy birthday. I'm gonna put it up. I'm gonna put it up. I think it's a good. I think I'm gonna put up it's my birthday. Unless you truly don't want me to put it on the board. But yeah, it would be quite unseasonal. I think it's been 5 months since my actual birthday. I'm not quite sure. But let me know. I can definitely leave the board as is. I just yeah, unsure. I already issued the refund. Okay, okay. Refund has been issued for the points. Board will not be changed, so it goes. It's a famous song a guy wrote for their cousin. Interesting. That's cool. I like famous songs. I like unfamous songs. I've been listening to a number of interesting and obscure musics lately. I got to listen to a lot of music between two car rides, to and from San Francisco, a total of like 16 hours in the car over the last week. There was lots of opportunity to listen to music, which is good because I don't always get a ton of time to do so. Um, yeah, I don't know. I have no intention of talking too much about my trip, and honestly, kind of just want to like jump into doing the regular poetry stuff. So I will ask who has things submitted to me to read on stream, which is like probably all of you, if I had to guess. And but we'll see. We'll see. Ray is sending dinosaurs. I'll take that as a yes. I'm writing a ballad, so not me. Excellent. A ballad, that's fun. Ballads are cool. You have stuff submitted, Nikki. Of course you do. I think Wobbledobs, he just submitted something. I feel like I saw that he was in here. Messier doesn't? Question mark. Yeah. Oh, Bookworm submitted something. Oh, did we already read this? Wait, The Struggle of Drowning. He drowns in a wild feeling. We read this, right? Did we read this? It's been a long time. I took like a whole ass week off from I think I think we read that. Yeah, yeah. I have one I think at Ishmael might actually like. Interesting. I have a theme in my head, but I'm still chewing ideas on how to deliver my meaning. Well, chew away. Chew away. I only have the translation. I think I just wrote a ballad. Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. You know what? Let's read Nikki. Let's read Nikki's poetry. What am I reading? We read I Keep Myself in Silver, which means we would be reading something else called Retrograde. Retrograde. Stars. We like stars. See mentions of Andromeda and Aries. Nikki, I presume you don't have any questions about this poem, but if you do, now would be a great time to let me know if you have any inquiries about this poem, things you would like me to focus on, think about as I read it, consider it, and generally dive into its surely deep and compelling meaning and all of that. Retrograde is the one. Okay. You have a thing at last? Is it submitted or is it just sort of like not submitted? I guess those are the two options. That's not really a very compelling question to ask. Man, it feels weird to be on stream. I've been like talking to people for the last week. I was hanging out with friends in a house together. And man, like it's very different to talk to humans versus talk to a Twitch chat. Not that you guys aren't humans hiding behind there, but you're definitely not like present and in front of my face and able to interact in that same way. So there's that. I just posted a new one, but there's a lot of others recently, so we probably won't get to it this stream. It seems like out of the people in chat, there are only a handful of people actually referring to everyone as chat. Yeah, thankfully I don't refer to my friends as chat. That would be bad. I was very unproductive this summer academically. Isn't that what the summer is for? I don't know if you have like a summer break. I don't know if the whole world does summer breaks or if other people have breaks at other times, but what's the point of being productive when you're allowed to not be? Maybe that's an easy question to answer, actually. We are the collective. Yeah, you are a collective. Whoa, Nikki, this poem is so pretty. Excellent that we're already getting glowing reviews for this work before I've even started to read it. That makes me quite optimistic. I'm always optimistic, though, about y'all's poetry. It's often lovely and beautiful, so. Yeah. Let's read a poem. Let's talk about it. Just like we always do. Right back into it. Here is Retrograde by Nikki. I keep painting constellations over stars that don't exist, framing you in Venus as you smile with Hamal. I've charted every glimmer with my fingers and my thumb held against the charcoaled sky to capture all its secrets. I place your eyes below Andromeda and let Aries kiss my palm, tracing how the light now falls like fire across my mouth. I give to you my shoulders for your stars to rest upon, my neck bent back to reach you as our bodies now collide. Then I'll capture all your edges with my finger and my thumb held against your pulsing chest, where all your glimmer lives. Retrograde. It's got a nice kind of metered rhythm to it, though it seemed like it doesn't totally have like any sort of rhyme scheme. As far as I was picking up on a first read, I mean maybe there's like some subtle internal stuff going on, but it's just kind of like a nice like blank verse, I guess. Although it's not, right. It's sort of, it has a rhythm, and maybe it's just a Nikki poem, and so it has rhythm, and there's not necessarily any sort of scheme that we can place on this too easily. But it does feel like it rolls off the tongue quite nicely, which, I mean, quite frankly, is no surprise. um, there's a couple cool things going on. I'm gonna just read it again, though. Retrograde. I keep painting constellations over stars that don't exist, framing you in Venus as you smile with them all. I've charted every glimmer with my fingers and my thumb held against the charcoaled sky to capture all its secrets. I place your eyes below Andromeda and let Ares kiss my palm, tracing how the light now falls like fire across my mouth. I give to you my shoulders for your stars to rest upon, my neck bent back to reach you as our bodies now collide. Then I'll capture all your edges with my fingers and my thumb held against your pulsing chest where all your glimmer lives. Jealous of Nikki's ability to find natural rhythm when it takes all my brain power to try to capture any. It's a hard thing, and it takes a long time to kind of cultivate and just to get that feel right. And it isn't just something that is talent. I think it takes quite a bit of time, right, and practice. I love some of like the through lines going on here. The first thing I noticed, I think, was this like, of course, the stars and all of that imagery, but this sort of like painting, drawing, through line happening in this poem, which is cool because it works well in many cases as a double meaning with like touch, right? As we're tracing, as we're capturing all your edges, and then this sort of fingers and thumb, which gets repeated a couple times, has that idea maybe of holding a pencil or a pen, but also, of course, of like touching another person, right? So, I think that's very cool, and of course that works very nicely, right? As we have the theme of drawing, right, or the imagery of drawing, and then we have like the imagery of stars, and these things are unified together by like the overarching idea of constellations, right? Because constellations are these kind of lines that we draw, right, between stars. So it works, I think, like quite nicely on that way to sort of expand this single point of imagery, constellations, out into some other aspects. I think that's very cool, right? Welcome in, Cabbage. I need to start writing daily so my mind will work like this when inspiration actually strikes. Yeah, that can be like the good thing about a writing habit, right? Is not that you're always inspired, but you're always ready, and you're always just like doing something and practicing. I think when you write daily, you end up with like more bad stuff, but it's okay because you end up with like better good stuff. Um, it's very close. I did get a little bendy with the meter. Yeah, it does have a lot of variation, right? And that's cool. I mean, we can talk about that meter, right? Just to like kind of show, like, I keep painting constellations. I keep. I keep feels pretty even to me. I keep painting. I keep painting. Da 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 da. I keep painting. It could be like da da da. It could be like a sort of pickup here. I keep painting. I keep painting constellations. Da 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 da. There's this like 1 2 3 1. I keep painting constellations over stars. 1 2 3 that don't exist. Right? There's sort of like a triplet feel here if we're talking about music, right? I think is maybe how I would describe it in non-technical terms, right? I keep painting 1 2 3 4 constellations, but it's actually like up, up, down, up, right? Where like the third syllable's kind of stressed. Constellations. I keep painting over stars that don't exist. So then it's like 1 2 3 1 2 3 4. So it is like having a nice variation in the verse as we go through this poem, framing you, and then it's actually framing you in Venus. 1 2 3 in 1 2, right? As you smile with Hamal. So there's like a lot of variation, but I think roughly we're circling around this idea of like the groups of three. I'm using musical, notation. These like groups of three, or these like groups of two landing on a stressed syllable, or these kinds of things, and I think this maybe shows, right, that a natural meter often can occur from some amount of consistency, some amount of repeated pattern, but it's just the playing with that and the looseness of it that kind of lets it feel like it evolves naturally and more speech-like. I've charted every glimmer, so that's again like I've charted every glimmer, 7 syllables. We're at like 7 or 6 or 8 syllables in most of the lines, it seems like. Which makes it sound kind of ballady-ish, right? Ballady-ish, because ballads tend to do the pattern of like 8 6 8 6, I think. But we're also not rhyming. So it just ends up with this very loose feel. And I think what this is like accomplishing probably is a bit of this just like ethereal, patient. I think these are the things that come to mind: subtle, gentle, right? Verse that is repeated can feel forceful sometimes. Verse that is, really structured can lose some of that subtlety, and it can want to push, especially we think of like the sonnet, the iambic pentameter with rhymes. We can want to drive, right? Because that can have like the heartbeat feel. Um, and I think all of these adjectives, these descriptors, work quite nicely with what we're describing, right? If we're talking about, the tracing of light and these like gentle touches of bodies that are cosmic, and like placing a finger and a thumb and being held, gently, and glimmering things, right? A glimmering thing is, I mean, it's light, like literally it's made of light, but it has a sort of distance, ephemerality. There's a motion, but it's not a motion, not emotion. There's motion, right? So I think this sort of pacing, this sort of tone, this sort of way that we're setting up the actual sonic, landscape of the poem is working really, really nicely with the rest of things. Okay, I missed some chats. Which one was really like someone, Nikki, explaining Hamal. Hamal is the brightest star in Aries and means the lamb, which I thought added a nice layer. That's good to know because I'm not big on stars. This is in Aries, and it's the lamb. So that means we have a sort of like repeated a repeated Aries thing, um, which maybe, we could imagine this like referencing a specific person like with a star sign Aries, which is kind of cool. Works into the whole love thing, right? The whole idea of star signs and compatibility, and I think that, you know, naturally stars, naturally constellations, I think contribute nicely to a poem that is love, because we use these things as metaphors for love so often, right? Um One thing I like about the encounter slash relationship this captures is the mutuality of it. The author's voice is active. The author paints. The author puts their lover's eyes in their place. But the author is also offering themselves, giving their shoulders, bending their neck back. The active voice of the author, but also the author's offering to me, captures a healthy relationship, which is lovely. That's a that's a really great reading and a cool through line. So as you say, right, we have this active voice of the author, which maybe we'll put in red because that's kind of an active color. Painting, right? I keep painting constellations over stars that don't exist, framing you in Venus as you smile with Hamal. And here we even have like the other person sort of actively doing something, smiling. And then we say, I've charted every glimmer, right? To capture all its secrets. So we have this action of the main voice. And then I place your eyes, right, below Andromeda. But then we have this sort of action of the other, right? Let Aries kiss my palm. And it feels like, you in this poem are made to be associated with Aries because you smile with Hamal, right? Aries kisses my palm. And then tracing how the light now falls like fire across my mouth. So again, we have this tracing being done by our, Aries character. And then it's an effect that's happening to me, right? And then I give to you my shoulders, for your stars to rest upon my neck bent. And it's really nice. We have like roughly two stanzas that are in this active mode, and then we have two stanzas that are mostly focused on the actions of the other, or the sort of like receiving mode, or the giving oneself mode, right? And then we have back to active, right? I'll capture all your edges with my fingers and my thumb. But even then, right, the idea of capturing something using this language, right? Uh, Fingers and thumb, it feels delicate. It doesn't feel like it's taking in that same way. So it kind of mixes these feelings. Held against your pulsing chest. And even then, right, my hand is against your chest, where all your glimmer lives. So there's a sort of acknowledgement, ultimately, of the other's beauty. So we have this unification, right, of the subject and object. The subject being sort of the speaker, and the object being that which they observe, that other person. And I mean, I think that's a beautiful way to describe love, right? People talk about love a lot as unification, right? This person, me, becoming sort of one with this other person, you, is a very, you know, time honored way to describe love, right? So that's a really, really great observation about the poem Wobbledopsy, right? Yeah, a lovely reading. This poem feels both warm and comforting, like the person they speak of is right there, but also a bit sad and distant to me, as if they're missing this person, they're gone, and you can only see them in the stars. Yeah, when we place someone in the stars, I mean, we can think of the stars as a symbol, right? And maybe everyone is welcome to chip in on what do the stars represent, just generally in any context. And one certainly is distance, as you say, right? The stars are far away, they're out there, they're glimmering, they're in the heavens. And so when we use stars in poetry, it can sort of create this automatic association with a feeling of distance, right? Stars, I think people also sometimes use in relation to death symbolically, right? Looking up to the stars and this connection with like a very real heaven, someone watching down from the stars. Stars can also be like hopeful and like wishes, so they can have a much there how you say it, Nikki, wishes, right? Because we wish upon stars, we see them as this hopeful shining thing, right? They're light within darkness. And you say coldness and warmth, right? Which is that same idea of light within darkness, coldness and warmth. Because, the night is cold, but these things are light. The night is dark, but they have this sort of comforting feeling to them. There's also maybe this feeling of like the expanse of the universe, the sublime, right? Something that is so massive and far beyond uh, the scale of human understanding, right? To look up at the stars at night. And I think this is an excellent thing to sort of subconsciously associate with love, right? Uh, Stars, we have the association of star-crossed lovers. This is, Romeo and Juliet, two people who love each other but cannot be together because of fate, right? The stars. The stars have a fate kind of feeling to them as well. The stars can be guides with the whole constellation thing. There's like so many associations we make with stars. The gods, absolutely, gods slash god singular, right? Um, very often, right? The heavens, the gods, the cosmos, whatever. Um, so we have a lot of different associations. But what? I think I started talking about this. Because we were talking about distance, right? And then distance, as well as I think this coldness, maybe can contribute to an interpretation like that. Maybe this feeling of being star-crossed, maybe this idea of death, right? And of course, yes, do. You said it before I could. That's like the next thing I was going to say. Retrograde astronomically refers to something backwards. Yes. Um, Retrograde is a sort of backwards movement. I think it's usually in relation to like two celestial bodies moving at different speeds, where like one is going faster and the other one is then going slower. It's like it's going backwards and it's in retrograde or something. No idea. It depends on positions of things. Not an expert. But yes, it has this feeling of going backwards, which I definitely think can have this association of distance. And then when something is in retrograde, in like astrology, I know this is generally like a bad omen. At least I'll see people saying like, "Oh, my life is all fucked up. It must be because Mercury is in retrograde, or because Mars is in retrograde, or whatever, and it's messing with my energies." So, uh, in that sense, we get from the title a bunch of colder, negative, less positive. I'm really eloquent today. Associations, right? So we can look at the poem through that lens. We can look at it through the lens of, sort of what is cold and what is warm. Because I also think there are things that we can't necessarily force coldness onto, right? So I keep painting constellations over stars that don't exist. And I think right away there's a coldness to this, right? Constellations are kind of this ascribed meaning that humans place on something, but we're like drawing constellation between non-existent things. So it's as if we're creating meaning when meaning is not there. Um, Constellations over stars that don't exist keeps giving me pause because constellations are so tightly associated with the connection of existing points. Yeah, so we're creating meaning out of like nothing, basically. And I think this could actually go both ways, where, creating meaning of nothing could definitely be like just a sort of like delusional. If we think of love, making like ascribing love to a relationship where there is no love, right? But then there's also the idea that this could be like hope, right? Charting something, creating something new, exploring something that has not been done before, especially if we associate it down here with like I've charted every glimmer. There can be this feeling of making something new, I think, which is kind of hopeful, right? But depending on how we read that, I think it definitely kind of affects the rest of the work. We're in lockstep. Yes, we are too. Not sure how to place it over the rest of the poem, though. Yeah, that's an interesting question, right? If we take this thing as making meaning of nothing in a bad way, it has really strong implications about all of this tenderness that we make later. And this could be like a really tragic yearning, right? That's just like love that cannot be, love that is distant, love that is, lost in the stars. But if it's this like hope, why did it do that? If this is a feeling of hope rather than a feeling of sort of oblivion, then it could be much more positive. But we go forward, framing you in Venus as you smile with Hamal. I had mentioned earlier, if you look at the actual charts, there's actually a bit of a face formed by Andromeda and Aries. That's cool. But you have to take some liberties with Andromeda, of course, right? But we're poets. We're here to take liberties. um, so framing you in Venus as you smile with Hamal is like very warm, very positive, right? Venus associated with beauty, associated with love. Hamal, if this is the lamb, right, then this is, innocent. This is sort of probably like warm and fluffy and cute and lovable, all these things that lambs are. And it's smiling. So suddenly we have this really, really warm stanza placed against this stanza that, or not stanza, couplet, against this couplet that could go either way, right? And that's very curious. A constellated star that doesn't exist would, from an observational POV, suggest to me stars that still glimmer in our sky, despite their light-emitting selves having died out. That's an interesting idea, right? Stars that don't exist, the idea of a dead star, right? Because this is something that happens. We keep receiving light from stars. We keep receiving light after they've blown up and in reality far off in the universe have died. And that's like sort of sinister in its own way, probably, right? But it's an interesting thought. Okay, continuing with this idea of both warm and kind of cold and distant, as Bookworm said. Um, I've charted every glimmer with my fingers and my thumb, right? Again, sort of a warm, at worst, it's neutral, held against the charcoaled sky to capture all its secrets. And the charcoaled sky, right, blackness is sort of dark, it's sort of cold, but at the same time, my finger and my thumb held against the charcoaled sky brings us back to this idea of painting. It brings us back to the idea that like our speaker kind of has control. And I think that's maybe the thing that keeps this poem from feeling very dark, right? Is that our speaker, like Wobble Dobsy mentioned earlier, is always active, right? They're always painting and framing and charting and holding and capturing. And so there's not this feeling that we sometimes get in, a poem about the stars and a poem about the universe. There would be that feeling of like cosmic helplessness, right? Where it's big and expansive and distant and I can do nothing. But by acting in this world we create, right? By doing all this stuff, it sort of like magnifies the speaker, I think is a word I might use. Magnifies where they're acting on this sort of cosmic scale, which is pretty interesting. It's also an interesting inversion of astrology, right? Astrology that tends to say that like the stars influence us flips it on its head, maybe retrogrades it in some way, to say that like I, influence the stars, which is quite a powerful and kind of magical notion, for this poem, right? Welcome, Undyne Tale. The stars feel like they control us. To feel like we're in control of something cosmic is quite a change. Ah, exactly what I was saying. Yeah, right. To be in control of the cosmic, to be in control of the universe, this thing that we associate with fate, with guiding us, with God, with wishes, right? It makes this speaker, and in a sense, it makes this love divine, right? Which is interesting because now the poem is like working on these two levels, which we're not quite sure which one to interpret, and I think they're probably both valid. Where this poem can be like cosmic, divine, universe spanning love, we are cosmic entities type stuff, right? And then it can also be like floating in dead space, creating meaning out of nothing. Love in retrograde, tragic, yearning, distance, cold, right? And it's quite impressive that at least thus far, by the end of stanza 2, this poem can comfortably occupy both of these spaces. I think that's an incredible thing to do in a poem, and an incredible thing allowed by the vagueness that you like to employ, Nikki, right? To be able to not just occupy different interpretations, which vagueness lets us do, right? It can point to many different interpretations and readings, but to point to vastly different ones within the same poem without like having the work feel dissonant and like disjointed, is quite impressive. It's quite powerful. So that the lamb also echoes the divine. It does, yeah. Also, to even just to capitalize Venus, Hamal, Andromeda, on its own echoes the divine, as to have, I mean, they are proper nouns on their own, right? But to have these names of these sort of cosmic figures, and Venus is literally a god, so it works quite well. I also love that we're like charting and like doing this kind of action, this exploratory action, with the association of stars as like travel and guidance. You're like working this symbol from so many perspectives. It's very impressive. um, okay, third stanza, which I think Ishmael said earlier. Third stanza is the best. Um, how the author describes their design as having a potential beyond them. Let Aries kiss my palm. Yeah. So let's read this stanza. I trace your eyes below Andromeda, and let Aries kiss my palm, tracing how the light now falls, like fire across my mouth. Fire, oh my god, it keeps like scrolling over there. Fire and Aries is subtle and clever. I only know this because I'm an Aries, but uh, it's like a fire sign. If you're an astrology person, they have like fire signs, water signs, air signs, and earth signs, right? And Aries is a fire sign. Clever. um, okay, but Ishmael, you said how the author describes their design as having a potential beyond them. Their design as having a potential beyond them. I think you mean like the idea of this Aries, this constellation, this sort of abstract thing, like becoming sort of tangible and kissing the palm, which I agree is incredibly beautiful, and I think speaks to that whole idea of either the magnification of the speaker into the cosmos, or just this like merging of the cosmic and the uh, merging of the cosmic and um, the material, right? And even that the thing of like I'm placing your eyes below Andromeda, right? To have a tangible thing within a constellation, right? I place your eyes below Andromeda, and let Aries kiss my palm, tracing how the light now falls like fire across my mouth. And all of this is very warm. Uh, certainly helped by fire, by light, by kissing a palm. And this does have the more positive, the more loving connotation, and a bit less of that underlying, uncertainty. I think this even pushes into the realm, which the poem hadn't quite done yet, into truly like passion and intensity, uh, in its subtle way, right? The kissing of the palm, the fire across my mouth, right? Um, I think has this sort of like it starts to take this like sexual intensity, uh, which is pretty freaking cool. I think in a poem that is also so light and subtle, right? Um, yeah. Why are they all the Star of David? I am the water sign that should be an earth sign. I am a Libra, which is a very autistic sign. That's crazy. My three major signs are water, so I'm just ruled by emotions. I think, I'm not sure about myself. Um, I should like get my mom to send me my star chart, um, and look at it on stream. I know within my three major signs, I have two fire signs because I'm in Aries as like the main one because I was born at the end of March. It's not my birthday. And then I think I have a Leo somewhere in my big three. And then I don't know about my other one, but I'm very fire. So I'm in this poem. Anyway, fire does get personified as a kisser. Yeah. I mean, it's that, right? Fire kisses things in all circumstances, and then the fire sign has that like active intensity as well. Happy birthday. uh Man, I leave and come back, and then suddenly it's my birthday. That's incredible. Okay. So, and then what's cool, right, is we go from this very active, light, fire, ephemeral kind of texture in the poem to like, I give to you my shoulders. We like land somewhere, right? I give to you my shoulders for your stars to rest upon. And this really pulls back. My neck bent back to reach you as our bodies now collide. So we're creating the imagery, right? My neck bent back to reach you, right? If we're like, and our bodies colliding, two people embraced, the shorter person tipping their head up, kissing, right? Um, so we're still carrying on, I think, the intensity created in the Aries section, except it has this more grounded, water sign, earth sign, if we're going to be astrological about it, that kind of feel, right? So this is more of our water. This one's more of a fire stanza, right? The one up here, I don't know, maybe with the charcoal, it's sort of an earth sign. We can be real, you know, astrological about this and say it traverses all of the signs or something. I don't know if we can argue either of the other stanzas as air signs, but I'm unsure. Anyway, I give to you my shoulders for your stars to rest upon. And so I think I want to look at these like constellations, since you say there is kind of like a picture being formed by Aries and Andromeda. So maybe we will look this up. I'll try to find like a picture, I guess. Um, Aries and Andromeda. Okay, let's see if see if we can find a decent picture. Okay. I'm gonna save this image is what's gonna happen. Can I save this image? We're getting there. I'm finding it. This wouldn't be much to see on the screen, admittedly. I just want to save image in photos. Okay. I'm gonna put it in the whiteboard thing so that we can look at it. And we're gonna try to construct a sort of face here. We're back. Okay. Here's our night sky. And we do in fact have, right, Aries, we have Hamal as mentioned, and then we have Andromeda up here. You know, maybe I'm not very creative. Maybe I'm not very imaginative as a poet. That I don't see a face here. um, so Andromeda is. Does Andromeda keep going this way, or there's some other stars here? Does it have to be like flipped over? We have like shoulders, right? So we're talking about like, I give to you my shoulders for your stars to rest upon. And I wonder if it's sort of the idea that like this is the shoulders and like the head and the face is like Aries up here, and so it's the stars kind of resting upon each other. Uh, and okay, and then triangulum is the nose of the face, so it's we would have to turn it upside down. Looks sort of like a lizard. Um, Scorpius is the shoulders. Oh, geez. So I don't have a big enough I don't have a big enough picture that shows Scorpius and such. But okay, is Scorpius this way? I think Scorpius would be that way. Um, in which case Scorpius is a big hook shape, right? So then you'd have a head on top of the big hook of Scorpius, and you'd have the some sort of mouth here. We're just gonna roll with it. I can send a link to Scorpius. Um, I think we're just gonna have to trust you. Drowning Devil, hello, welcome. Haven't seen you in a while. That is absolutely true. Welcome in. It is a username I've not seen in a long time. How's the poetry? Or the not poetry. You don't have to be writing poetry. Okay, you sent me a link to Scorpius. Oh, Scorpius. I was thinking of. Oh yeah, that's Scorpius. So if I share my screen, right? Uh, Scorpius looks like this. Um, Now, I'm not sure where Scorpius is in relation to anything else. Is the issue. I'm realizing because none of these are filled in with lines. So anyway, I presume the top part of Scorpius, the sort of scorpion claws, are the um, whatever you would say, the shoulders that you're sort of speaking of. Um, we're just gonna take your word for it, Nikki. We're just gonna take your word for it. Pretty good. I was actually finished one yesterday. How's the streaming? Stream has been excellent. Streaming is still going strong and amazing, and more people than ever, and more poetry than ever, and more amazing stuff. Welcome in, Face Your Fear. And I'm doing well as a person, so that's really good. I know I was a rather neurotic and erratic person probably around when you used to watch my stream. Someday a poem will have Imogen opening the periodic table, learning the standard model of particle physics. Yeah, you write that one, Ray. Okay. You write that one, and then I'll do it. Anyway, regardless, I think it's very cool that we're creating, you know, the shoulders and your stars, which are like, sort of your face, mouth, something. Doesn't really matter. It's interpretive that we can sort of like build this sort of intimate scene from this imagery. Uh, but it's cool that we're building this scene of two people while also, sort of mapping our hypothetical face in the stars, uh, with our new constellation. And I guess maybe that could be a way to read like constellation over stars that don't exist to sort of create new constellation, although that's not quite what's being said. Aries and Scorpio are opposing in the night sky. They're on opposite sides of the earth. Wild. That's cool. So it's big. We span the whole sky, right? When you create this imagery, if it's going from Scorpio all the way to Aries, right? Anyway, uh, then I'll capture all your edges with my fingers and my thumb held against your pulsing chest, where all your glimmer lives. So I think we end this. I'll capture all your edges with my fingers and my thumb, held against your pulsing chest where all your glimmer lives. I think this ends quite warmly, right? Being held against the chest, right? With the glimmer of this person. But I think like the framing of this poem, fundamentally leaves this warmth as a question no matter what, right? This sort of question of what is the reality of this cosmic dance, right? Is this sort of Wombat, sorry, you just totally snapped me out of my uh, uh, uh out of my train of thought with your periodic table cleverness. I remember doing that in high school. I would write like on notes to my friends in science class, and it would be, um, yeah, fluorine, uranium, carbon, potassium, FuCK, yttrium, oxygen, uranium, YOU, right? um, anyway, this poem ends very warmly, but I think the whole cosmic dance is kind of called into question by the poem itself, which I think is quite cool and quite satisfying. That whole reading of the poem was me investigating Bookworm's comment from like half an hour ago, and I have so much chat to catch up on, and I'm sure you guys have said some really like compelling things since then. I guess the last stanza contradicts your sad reading. I think maybe, right? I mean, like the idea of a glimmer could be good, it could be bad. I think when we take the glimmering things as distant and ephemeral, it makes us second guess the positivity of the poem. But I do think it maybe reads as surface more positive, with maybe some like, cosmic dissonance underlying the poem, some sense that not all is right. I mean, just the idea that the poem is titled Retrograde really like throws a wrench into it. Um, and how the light changes because of the design. Oh, there's definitely a possible sadness spun through the hope in the final stanza. Wishes, coldness, warmth. Love the juxtaposition. Retrograde. Da 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 da. It's the illusion that they are moving apart when normally they move toward due to speed. Yeah, and I think that definition of retrograde, right? The illusion of things moving apart from each other based on, the speed that they're going is really tragic, right? Just as a symbol of love, right? This is sort of gives the idea of growing apart, of creating more distance, of being flung off into the stars. And I think it's a really powerful title in that it gives the poem, it opens the poem to like a sad interpretation, right? But it simultaneously, even though it does that and it's potentially sad, it's not so specific, I would say, that it necessarily forces the poem to feel sad or to feel somber. Because I think we can read retrograde as, this sort of inversion of the material and the cosmic. I think we can read retrograde as, this sort of, yeah, that, right? The magical magnification of person into cosmos, right? Um, Hello there, been a while. Changed my nickname from Mako Takeo to this one. Well, welcome back, RX the Great. Glad to have you. Okay, I need to catch up on chat. There's so many. Retrograde being bad depends on where it's placed in your birth chart, but yeah, it's generally thought of as bad. So even that, right? The fact that this title of retrograde casts a question, something that's generally bad, but not always, right? And if we think of the sort of maybe tragic yearning reading of this poem, like that's something we usually think of as bad, to yearn and to be far apart, but maybe it's not, right? Maybe this is, some long distance cosmic scale relationship, And some people might normally not like that, but it's not always the case, right? It's sort of questionable. It's based on context, and I like that. I had mentioned earlier, if you look at the actual star charts, there's a face. Okay, I read that one. We talked about that. Dead stars we talked about. I know nothing about astrology. The stars feel like they control us. We read that one. So hard to be a Twitch streamer. I have like all these chats to read. But in a way, someone who keeps framing and painting and creating can be the tragic figure in that way. Read it if they are never... Bookworm read it as if they never fully realize what they are trying to create. Yeah, right, we have this constant yearning, hoping to capture. And I mean, we do sort of paint and frame and chart and capture and place the eyes and trace. And it seems like we do get the conclusion with like the collision of bodies, right? Capture all your edges. I mean, it's interesting we switch here, right? I give you all of this and then you say, I will, right? Then I'll capture all your edges. With my fingers and my thumb held against your pulsing chest where your glimmer lives. And that means this hasn't happened, right? Our conclusion, very cleverly, through just this simple use of I'll instead of I think excellent to use the contraction instead of I will. It's more subtle. It's easier to pass by. Makes it hypothetical, right? Makes this a hope and not a reality. So as you say, right, the edges have not been captured. The whole love has not been realized in this poem. And so there is still distance. And maybe that's a distance that's growing, right? Maybe it's a distance that's somehow coming closer. But it remains inconclusive at the end of this poem when we use that subtle shift of tense from I capture all your edges to I will capture, because now we're existing in a different sort of space and a different time, right? This reminds me of this old Tumblr post about how everyone is made of stardust. It was saying we had life because the stardust wanted to be pulled back together or something. I don't know. The poem just makes me think of that. Yeah, it definitely has these feelings of people and love as this cosmic thing, right? This meaningful thing. This placing of meaning into something vast and uncertain. And maybe that brings us back to the first line of the poem that is a little confusing and has continued to be confusing. I keep painting constellations over stars that don't exist, right? And we could read that stars that don't exist as, stars that are not stars, stars that are people, or stars of my own creation, or just the idea of ascribing this sort of cosmic nature onto things that are not, right? And then that could be a way to sort of read this poem. Lamb, constellation called Triangulum that forms the nose. Okay, the Triangulum is the nose. If they get too cocky, we can always put them on fire. I'm the water sign, talking about signs. 3 major signs are water. I'm just ruled by emotion. Oh yeah, everyone was sharing their astrology and such. Okay, and the violence of like fire across my mouth compels retrograde to suggest the same thing we see in the constellated face. Aries shaping a frown. Oh, check the Discord chat. Okay, I will look at the face in the Discord. Oh, you did this one as well. Okay, so we are seeing Aries as a sort of frown. So yeah, if we see Aries as a frown, if we have fire on the mouth, right, this has the feeling of intensity and passion, but it also takes that feeling for this poem of like something more negative, right? Something kind of, yeah, sinister in some capacity. Um, my upper sign is Capricorn. No complaining. I don't know anything about signs, unfortunately. I had to read it more than 3 times to make sure I hadn't overinterpreted the negative aspects. Scorpius. Okay, I'm gonna skip a bunch of these chats. I think I'm mostly caught up on the big stuff. Is this finally a Nikki poem that isn't just fire? Referring to the earth and water stuff. Yeah, Nikki has a lot of fiery poems, but Nikki has a lot of water poems too. If you review the last stanza under the weight of that first couplet, though, okay. So the first couplet, I keep painting constellations over stars that don't exist. Then I'll capture your edges with my finger and my thumb, held against your pulsing chest where all your glimmer lives. Yeah, and this is like the question of the poem, right? Is this painting, right? I mean, the idea of painting even is just a very human created thing. And the idea of like creating this lover, creating this glimmer, really calls the whole thing into question in a very sort of unreliable narrator kind of way, which is cool. I think it's quite negative. All this person's glimmer lives in their heart and around the edges, and the parts that don't exist. While they stay nearby, the distance remains the most apparent aspect. The speaker frowns as they touch. They have to draw imaginary eyes on the opposite side of Aries, where Hamal lives, to produce a smile. This poem makes me sad in the most despairing, ephemerally hopeful way. Yeah, right? And I think, yeah, the ultimate tragic yearning, right? Seeing this love only on like the superficial aspects. And this is what we can think of love, or yearning, not love. When we yearn for someone, when we hope for someone in this tragic way, we're seeing someone as superficial. They're a distant star that's glowing, and all of the associations we create of that person are things we paint onto reality, are constellations on something that is not real. And then this poem is like crushing, right, under that reading, because I think we have this almost like dramatic irony where the speaker concludes this kind of like happy, right? It seems like they are hopeful and they still think there is this possibility for love at the end of this poem, when really it's like it's hopeless and it's distant and it's light years away from them. And then it's like, and I mean that's so human, right, as well, to have hope, right? And like that's how love happens, right? When there is hope at something impossible, that's like the human impulse, right, to create where there is nothing, to draw upon the stars. So at the same time, like this tragedy circles back to almost like the beauty of humanity. Um, and then it's like, yeah, very, very conflicting. I mean, I think you say it quite well, Dew on the Grass. The most despairing, ephemerally hopeful way, right? The tragedy of the human condition through love. Damn you, Imogen in chat. I wasn't smart enough to see the sad reading, and now you curse me with it instead of the feel-good love poem. Well, the feel-good love poem is just as correct as the sad reading, right? It is a feel-good love poem, and it is beautiful and tender and warm and passionate, and it's light within darkness. And maybe you can say that like if we want to unify the readings in a truly kind of synthetic dialectical way, we can say that the tragic yearning that we do as humans, the creation of meaning in a dark abyss of the cosmos, is the light and is the warmth that allows us to continue and that allows us to have love, right? And if you couldn't if you couldn't exist tragically, then you don't kind of earn, or you don't get, or you don't open yourself up for the possibility of like true love at this cosmic scale. And maybe a cynical way to read the poem is that a cosmic and godlike and constellated love is impossible, and that this poem is tragic, but we can turn the tragedy on its head, and then we can look at it lovingly, and the tragedy turns the love on its head. Um, and, maybe that's our retrograde, right? That we're never quite sure. That these things are always kind of passing and getting closer and further, and there's this illusion depending on where you look. Um, like an optical illusion of a poem. Depending on what part you focus on, it changes the whole thing, right? The person described in the poem may never change, but the glimmer will still be visible to the speaker's eyes. Yeah. So hypothetically, what would a hypothetical be? Something more real? A hypothetical is something that is less than real. I wonder if like thetical has like a connection to like thesis, but that doesn't seem correct. I don't know. I don't know the etymology there. You hold on to the warm reading. I wrote it ambiguous on purpose, of course. Yeah. Um, Something blatantly spoken in their thesis. There you go. A hypothetical. Never mind. I just remembered that my nickname was Bleenus when I first joined here. Okay, I remember that username. Eric's the Great. I have seen many Christians argue that the bread of Eucharist being flesh being even more real than their own flesh. Oh, so that's a hypothetical. Sure. That's off topic though. They're just painting constellations where they don't exist. Hey, yo. Okay, we're having like a whole Catholicism conversation. I caught up on chat. I made it. I caught up to chat. Okay. So that means I've covered all of the wisdom that you all have provided in interpreting this poem. Oh, I made a funny. I skipped your Catholicism comment. Catholicism always talking transubstantiation this, transubstantiation that, but it is still yet to consider substantiating the trans. Yeah. Well, Catholicism is getting like quite progressive in a lot of its official doctrine. It's actually just kind of like in practice, a lot of Catholics aren't progressive. Like the Pope's whole like AI doctrine is fascinating. Um, I guess the big difference is many Protestants, Eucharist, blah blah blah, religion. Let's go Chicago Pope. He's goated. He's awesome. Catholicism has gone woke. Yeah, in the D&D campaign that I'm writing, or the RPG setting, it's not for D&D. It's like a sci-fi future, that's in like 2112. I think is the year that it's set. The Pope and the Vatican becomes like an anti-AI crusader, like Butlerian jihad kind of style situation, which is pretty cool. Pretty sure Pope Francis called trans girls daughters of God. We love him. We love the popes. High key. Yeah, I don't actually mind Catholicism. I prefer it to Protestants, honestly. But I've gotten like direct, like I've been like harassed by Protestants, so there's that. I've never had a Catholic harass me for my queerness. Not that I knew of, at least. Anyway, this poem's awesome. This poem's so cool. Uh, you know, I think at least me as a poet, right? I like as a reader, I like art that can capture like these fundamental things about the human condition, right? These sort of like universal truth kind of situations. And this poem does a really good job of attempting that. I mean, I think you said, Nikki, that this in your like post that this is one of the more ambitious poems you've ever written, and I think that makes sense. It's working on so many levels. It's truly occupying like the full breadth of this star symbol, and kind of expanding on it and connecting it with these other things. You know, it's talking about, you know, like the nature, the kind of fundamental nature of like yearning and love that cannot be and hope and, you know, like delusion. Protestants will harass you more, unfortunately. Yeah, yeah. I just put something in the Discord as well. You don't have to look at it today. Thought I'd let you know. Hell yeah. If you add a horror element to the Protestant aesthetic, it do be haunting. Southern Gothic, Gothic Americana. True, true. It's a good aesthetic. Although, like, popes, like Catholicism plus like a horror element is pretty awesome too. I think Catholicism can go cosmic horror with like stained glass and saints and angels and transfigurations and like resurrection and bodies and like, you know, ornate vestments and like being. I feel like Catholicism leans more into like the grand fiction of the Bible, um, like angels and stuff. You know, yeah, biblically accurate harassment. That's crazy. um, that's crazy work. Also, like blasphemous. That's Catholic cosmic horror. I don't know blasphemous, but I mean it sounds neat. Okay, but we're totally. Oh, it's a video game. Okay, so we're totally oh, Innistrad. Yeah, that's probably where I get that appreciation from. I love Innistrad. One of my favorite planes. Anyway, I think we've departed from this poem since we're talking about Catholic cosmic horror, and that has very little to do with the words in front of us. So I'm going to ask if anyone has any final questions or comments on this poem for the author, Nikki. Comments, questions, anything for me. And if not, then we will read the poem a final time, send our profuse gratitude to Nikki, and then we'll move on to something else. Well, we'll take a break after that, but then we'll move on to something else. uh, but I guess I can just say while I'm waiting for other people's questions or thoughts is, I mean, I've given my thoughts, but this poem uh, is very. It uses its words very well. Um, the fact that it is so natural with the sound, and the sound kind of builds a great foundation for the rest of the work, which we've sort of forgotten. I was talking about that like an hour ago. Um, I don't know. It's such a Nikki poem, and I think I say this about a lot of your poems, Nikki. Is I'm like, this is a Nikki poem, right? But like the way that you connect like so much of the imagery that you like to use, right? This sort of like painting, like drawing visual element and this active thing. The way that you bring in the stars, the way that you bring in, you know, the body, right? And this sort of like the romance that you often like to do, and even like the passion and intensity, which I don't always see from you, and that's very cool. But it's like a logical extension when we scale it onto the size of this poem. And then, of course, your vagueness and the way you execute it in this poem, it's just really, really, really nice. Um, Nikki, I think I've asked once before, but what's your favorite celestial body? The moon. That's, yeah, that makes sense. I do be liking Venus too, though. Venus is excellent. Um, do I have a favorite celestial body? I would probably say Earth. You know, um, I I love the Earth. as a celestial body, its home. Gaia. Fly me to the moon and let me kick its fucking ass. Let me show what I have learned in my moon jujitsu class. That's incredible, Wombat. In other words, fuck the moon. Oh, is this not original? Did someone else write this? That's beautiful. That's fucking amazing. I like that song a lot. Fly Me to the Moon. Anyway, sounds like we don't have any more stuff about this particular poem, and so we will read it. Here is Retrograde by Nikki. I keep painting constellations over stars that don't exist, framing you in Venus as you smile with Hamal. I've charted every glimmer with my fingers and my thumb held against the charcoaled sky to capture all its secrets. I place your eyes below Andromeda and let Aries kiss my palm, tracing how the light now falls like fire across my mouth. I give to you my shoulders for your stars to rest upon, my neck bent back to reach you as our bodies now collide. Then I'll capture all your edges with my fingers and my thumb held against your pulsing chest, where all your glimmer lives. Retrograde by Nikki. Thank you so much for submitting this poem. Thank you so much for giving everyone the opportunity to experience it, read it, listen to it, discuss it. Thank you everyone for all the lovely comments that you all gave during that. Lots of lovely class participation and really beautiful from everyone, you know. Thank you. It is the submissions of you all that allow this stream to function, that allow it to be the beautiful thing that it is for me and for all of you. So, thank you, right? Thank you. Someone redeemed Hydrate. Which I need. Not used to talking this much. No streams for like 10 days. I'm really excited. As soon as this stream ends, I'm gonna eat this little Italian candy that's on my desk. Because when I was in California, me and my dad and grandma went to an Italian restaurant, and they gave us like a whole handful of these candies. And this is my last one. It's gonna be a great post-stream experience. A sweet treat for me. Anyway, we're gonna take a brief break. And then come back. During this break, I would love for you all, if you're able, to stand up, to do something kind for yourself, drink some water, go to the bathroom, get a snack, have a sweet little treat, and then we'll come back and do another poem or writing or something. And I will see you all in just a few minutes. It really isn't that long. I'll be back. Welcome back. See, wasn't that long. Got my cardigan back. This is my psych ward cardigan. Um, all right. Lots of things have been said. Always catching up on chat. Anyway, you've been writing the whole time, Ray. That's awesome. I think it's great that people use this stream as a place to write, and do that kind of thing. I almost think if people were always attentive to me all the time, that would be a bad thing. But I suppose I am talking about valuable things. At least I would like to think so. So maybe attention is also good. I don't remember who said it, but it went something like, if it's not cringe, isn't even a love poem. Yeah, I think that's a great line. You were saying, every time I accidentally write something romantic, I always become self-aware to the point where I cringe so hard that I can't continue writing. My cringe tolerance is honestly pretty low when it comes to literature and poetry. Yeah, I mean, like, love is so vulnerable, right? I I think it's harder to write about love than it is to write about like lust. I think it's harder to write about love than it is to confess like really horrible things. I think like it's easier to write so many things than it is to write love. And love is so big. Love is so difficult to take on, and it's really difficult. So I don't blame you. I encourage you to keep trying, Cabbage. I always need to encourage myself to keep trying, and I think actually I have a couple poems I need to write that are about love. It's actually like familial love, but even that is hard for me to write about in a way that feels satisfying. And maybe it's because love is so strong and love is so specific and love is so universal that if you don't feel like you're capturing it, then it feels like you've missed the mark on something so Elysian, so, divine, right? And you've truly like failed the muse or whatever. Now I don't think that's the case, and I think we're always more judgmental of our own art than of others, and I think other people will tend to read our love poems and be like, yeah, that's love, that's awesome, that's super cool and badass. So part of it is also just to fight through the cringe, right? That's important. Fight the cringe. You can punch everything but love to keep it at bay. But love is where you're most vulnerable. This is the way. Beautiful. Yeah. Love can only sort of be taken on through acceptance, and through like tenderness, right? It's very vulnerable. Am I interpreting low cringe tolerance correctly? Because a low spice tolerance is you can't tolerate much spice, is that you can't tolerate things you see as cringe. I think they're saying in their own work. So like if it gets a little bit cringe, then they immediately like stop liking their own writing. Is how I interpret that. Nikki can write about constellations and stars. I'll write about whose turn it is to do the laundry or cooking spaghetti together. But like the mundane is so beautiful. I think like you say that and I just read it as a comparison. Nikki does this thing and it's love. You talk about laundry and spaghetti and that's also love, right? These are all equally valid ways to write about love because love is so many things. Love is the mundane action of cooking together. Love is like the cosmic overwhelming feeling of all of it, right? So like I had a really good idea for a set of twin sonnets about two people locking eyes that gets substituted with moons in the text, and they describe how the other person seems like to them and how they feel themselves. And I had to stop after writing the first 4 verses, but it sounds so beautiful. It sounds really, really beautiful, Cabbage. So I don't know. What shall we read next? Yeah, we have to read something next, right? Um, okay, so there's a lobster love poem from Wombat. There is, oh geez, there's Eric's the Great, which is prose. So I think I'm gonna not do that. I'm definitely in a poetry mood. Um, Alekman is more Warhammer story. Oh, so you wrote more. You did a short story. That's so exciting, Alekman. I'm glad you wrote more. That's really freaking awesome. We have Bookworms. I am tired. We have, so I think the lobster poem has been in for like a really long time. Um, I think the lobster poem has been languishing. Uh, I didn't delight in lobster. Yeah, that's like one of the older poems submitted. So, uh, yeah, because we read Reminiscence by Cabbage, right? That was the heroic curse. Yeah, sonnet. Okay, so we will read. We will read. I didn't delight in lobster. That's a great title. Oh my gosh. I didn't delight in lobster. What a fun title. That's really excellent. One of those ones that just grabs you off the page, right? Um, and that's why a title can be so nice to have a little bit of that comedy, a little bit of that flair in a title can really do a lot of work for you as a poet. Um, Especially if we think about poetry as something that's, in the modern day, existing in social media feeds or in like a collection or an anthology. When someone's flipping through or scrolling through quickly and they see the poem, uh you know I didn't delight in lobster, and somehow my camera got bumped and is now really whack. Okay, I think that looks kind of straight. Straight is important here. Still doesn't totally. Anyway, not my problem. Lobsters. As always, no particular questions. You guys are truly, truly excellent with the question asking. But I understand it. There's no shame in no questions. Um, okay, let's read a poem. This poem is so crunchy to speak. Okay. Well, let's speak it. Let's give it a first read. Let's crunch into. I guess that's good, right? Lobsters are pretty crunchy. I guess if you're crunching, you're not eating the lobster, right? But they have crunchy shells, so enunciate the hell out of this one. I love you guys like reading the poems before I even start and like priming me and setting me up, like telling me to enunciate this first. I think I should do this whole analysis in red and orange and pink. Those are kind of lobster colors. That would be kind of fun. Oh, lobster emojis in chat. Awesome. Okay. I didn't delight in lobster. Eat the whole lobster like an apple. That's crazy. Okay. I didn't delight in lobster. Seeing several. Topping tarped tables, family function food. Often offered, scarlet shelled sustenance soon sunk. Butter bath. Decisively declined. Bug binge, liking liturgic lobster least. Turned 22, tentatively tried cracked claws, bit boiled body. Tasted terrific, too terrific, many missed meals my mind mourns, melancholy, yearly yearning, longing, lost, Lobster. 22 years of lost lobster. What a tragedy. What a tragedy of the crustacean variety. This is so fun. This is just fun and light. Excellent contrast to what we read earlier, right? It's so good, all caps. I'm glad you love this poem too. Um, yeah, okay. So lots of things happening, right? We obviously have this like line by line alliterative thing. I was hoping as I was reading, I'm like, oh, are these like spelling something out? But it's not. But we have seeing several, topping tarp tables, family function food, right? Often offered, scarlet shelled, sustenance soon sunk. So great sound in this, and I think it serves to really like it unifies these lines, right? Because you're like seeing several, and then it gets very strongly separated from topping tarped tables, family function food, right? And the fact of the alliteration used in this way creates this division every line. Okay, I used a non-lobster color. I already failed my suggestion of using lobster colors. Anyway, right? Often offered. Scarlet shelled sustenance soon sunk. Butter bath. And it makes these little lines, right? This butter bath line, like or like bug binge or cracked claws. They really hit in like a really satisfying way, you know. Tasted terrific. Too terrific. Many missed meals. My mind mourns melancholy. And what's cool is as we get to the end here, right, we unlock a degree of motion and energy that the poem kind of had locked behind its structure before, right? Before, everything is locked literally behind the fact that we separate our lines, seeing several, right? Topping tarp tables, family function food. But when we get to the end, tasted terrific, too terrific. So we extend beyond the single line. We extend beyond our kind of limited existence of not loving lobster. We expand our reality, our sonic landscape, right? Many missed meals my mind mourns, melancholy, yearly yearning, longing, lost lobster. And we even do this thing where we like connect the lines, right? Melancholy, yearly yearning, longing, lost lobster, right? So so it creates like a continuity, a completeness in the end of this poem, which gives it such like a satisfying ending. And I love how it's sort of tragic, right? That the lobster was so good that now we are left to mourn the fact, right? Mourn the fact that before the age of 22, we didn't eat lobster because it was like a bug, um, and it's a great like structure, and it's great how the sound contributes to that, right? Um, okay, y'all are saying some things. Applause, it's so good. It was a fun exercise. It seems like it, right? I read this poem a bit musically, but I'm very song minded. I think that makes sense, right? Um, and poems definitely can be very song like. The I don't like it, I love it payoff is peak. It's funny to me just how much you love this poem too. But yeah, right. We have this like, I don't like it, and then I try it, and you're like, terrific, too terrific, right? That I don't like it, I love it. That it's this full reversal from this thing hated, decisively declined, right? Decisively declined. Describing it in this distant way, family function food, right? Scarlet shelled sustenance. It's more of just an object to be eaten, not something to be enjoyed. Liturgic, liking liturgic lobster least. Liturgic is a word we're going to look up. Because I like liturgical is something to do with religion. Um, liturgic definition, and maybe liturgical is the word, but to use liturgic is a nice shortening of that. Relating to liturgy or public worship. Okay. So if we see it, okay, ceremonial, ritual, sacramental. Um, so in that case, right, liturgic lobster is this tradition, right? It's this family thing. It's almost worshipped, right? Um, I presume that means, you lived in this place where lobster was very important on some coast, right? And you'd have like the lobster season, and everyone would eat lobster, and it would be a big deal. And you're like, I don't like lobster. Sacrilege, right? By making it liturgic lobster, the dislike of lobster becomes a sacrilegious. We were talking about Catholicism and religion earlier, a sacrilegious action, right? And and this is, which makes the payoff of the turn even better, right? You're from Maine, yeah, yeah. Lobster, kind of important there. Um, lobster colors for decoration and emphasis. Um, living lobsters can have purple markings. We'll say lobsters can be any color, and then it's fine. Um, it was a challenge to get up to the 100% alliteration. Really had to flex my pen. You do a good job, though. But seriously, lobsters are so cute. They are. They're the little guys. Even if they want to grab at me sometimes, yeah. This was a true story, broadly speaking. After I wrote it, I realized the lobster can represent poetry itself. Yeah, I mean, lobster can represent so many things. I mean, it's funny because I don't know anything about it, but there's a very famous like book of essays by that guy. The book of essays, and one of the essays in it are called "Consider the Lobster." Um, who's the guy who wrote Infinite Jest? Um, anyway, so like the lobster already sort of has this modern literary association. So it's kind of funny that you uh, say that it could represent poetry in this way, but the lobster can represent so many things, right? And it is a sort of comedic tale, but at the core of it, right, it's like this idea of despising something and then starting to do it and realizing you don't, and then like truly falling in love with it. And actually, it's the same for me with poetry, in my own personal experience. I thought poetry was kind of silly and weird. Also, the same for like theater and acting, which is now something I really, really wish I had done and wish I had an opportunity to do, right? And so it was the lobster, right? The thing disliked, the thing despised, that then becomes just absolutely loved. Um, and I don't know. I mean, we could say there's. I mean, there is like human truth to this, but it's fun that it's just presented sort of comedically, right? That that it can just be a fun anecdotal tale, and that I think people like a reader could resonate this with like any food, or if they're thinking metaphorically, sort of any interest or thing that they once disliked and now enjoy. And I think that's it's just a very fun little poem, right? Thank you all for gathering here to honor the memory of Roger Smith. I wish he could have seen this outpouring of admiration uncooked, but I know he's still smiling down from the algae. You're applying to someone. That makes sense. It's a pipeline. Yeah. I'm going to read this again. It's so fun. Seeing several, topping tarped tables, family function food. often offered scarlet-shelled sustenance, soon sunk butter bath, decisively declined, bug binge, liking liturgic lobster least, turned 22, tentatively tried, cracked claws, bit, boiled body, tasted terrific. I love reading this poem. It's fun to read. I think you can sort of ascribe like to read this as turned 22, tentatively tried, cracked claws, bit, boiled body, tasted terrific, too terrific. Many missed meals, my mind mourns, melancholy, yearly yearning, longing, lost, lobster. Right? I think this poem could be a very fun one to just perform like exceedingly dramatically, right? And just to make this into a tragic tale, because that's sort of what the poem is setting up textually, right? To frame this thing as liturgic, to have the declining be decisive, to have it be this gross buggy thing, right? And then this turn, the tentatively tried, cracked claws, bit boiled body, right? And then we like, kind of pick up the pace, tasted terrific, and it's lovely. I don't know. It's just fun. Probably my least deep poem, lol. Not that that's a bad thing. Yeah, a poem doesn't have to be deep. And I think humorous poems are amazing, right? Humor is a really hard thing to make effective in any art, let alone poetry. And when it works, it works. And I don't know how to analyze humor, right? And I think that's the thing with humor is you can't, right? This is you spend too long and then you're just explaining the joke, right? Um but I think the cool thing about this poem is that it's just like a funny situation and a funny telling of it, and like the drama and like language employed carries a lot of that. Um but it's not even that there's like a joke itself, just sort of an unexpected and fun turn. Comedy is one of the most subjective things ever. Yeah, and like I really like comedy, although I don't consume nearly enough of it. And I love like Andy Kaufman. And he's just sort of absurd, and his comedy is nonsensical, and it doesn't make sense, and there's no way to explain it really. Like you could try talking about like the awkwardness and whatever, or like the like creating a simulated reality on stage through performance or something, but at the end of the day it's just funny, right? So a low stakes tragedy resulting in comedy. Yeah, I mean, comedy loves this idea of like inversion, right? To invert expectations or subversion, right? And so to have this thing be my mind mourns melancholy yearly yearning longing lost lobster, right? And the way that all of this kind of trails together into like a big final lament, kind of subverting the structure from before. I think it does a lot of things really well. Um, and maybe comedy can be explained, right? I think the change in tone is effective. I think the change in scale and scope, right? Like you say, low stakes to high stakes to yearning and mourning is funny and is comical. Um, but to say that isn't funny. uh, and your alliteration is awesome. I don't think there's very much to explain or to analyze in alliteration, which is why I don't usually talk about that stuff too much anymore. Because, like, you just point at it and say, like, look, there's S's and then there's T's and there's F's. And I think this is, like you said it was a great exercise. And I think, like, a way to like practice alliteration, right? This is awesome, and it's definitely would be a good exercise for probably anyone in the chat who's a poet to write something where every line is just alliterated across the whole line, right? Um, and that would be quite like good as a practice to emulate something like this, comedic or not, right? And to not have it feel like painful. Alliteration can feel painful sometimes, but this one doesn't. It has a lightness to it, and it has a bounciness. So awesomely alliterated all over. Yes. Comedy. Yeah. I don't know if I have more to say. It's fun. It's nice. It's well done. It's crunchy, like you say do. Um, but do you have any questions, Wombat, or does anyone else have questions? This might be like the shortest analysis in a very long time, if not. I also think that's okay. Uh, a great contrast after the very long, very in-depth Nikki analysis from just a moment ago, right? um, this is the duality of man, right? The heavy human crushing scope of love and reality in the universe, and the lobster. If you read it metaphorically, you can actually go pretty deep. Yeah, I mean, maybe we can. Maybe we can go deep, right? So we take the lobster as like some object that's not a lobster, right? Something we don't like, but is sort of something we will come to like, right? But like any object of affection, right? Seeing several, top, topping, tarps, tables, family, function, food. So we have this like opening, right, of a distance from tradition, right? Topping, tarped tables, family, function, food. So we're creating something that is like, somewhat holy or at least somewhat liked, somewhat respected. There is tradition around it. But at the same time, like I love the use of function food here, right? Like family function food, as in food from a family function, but also family function food, as though the speaker sees this as like, as we get later, sustenance, right? So to see something that other people like with a sort of disinterested, distant perspective, right? Often offered, right? Other people liking this thing, constantly wanting to give it to you. And I think that maybe speaks to this idea where like something lots of people like that you dislike, right? Constantly offered can almost like reinforce this like irrational dislike of a thing. And I think of myself like refusing poetry or refusing other interests, refusing femininity, or that kind of expression, right? Or queer love, um, and then like coming to like a decided, entrenched viewpoint, worldview of not liking something. Um, Scarlet shelled, sustenance, soon sunk, butter bath, decisively declined. I like this connection, right? Often offered, decisively declined. It almost like links these two stanzas together nicely. Bug binge, liking, liturgical lobster the least. And this feeling like liturgic, I think works really well in the feeling that it becomes obligation, and like the idea of a bunch of other people respecting and liking a thing continually makes it less attractive to you by your sort of ostracization from the interest. Ostracization. It's getting very. It's funny to sort of like take a poem like this like seriously. Um, this is a comedy in that. Turn 22, tentatively try. Right, and we have this coming of age. Right, it speaks to this sort of dislike for things out of inexperienced principle as childish, right? And it's childish to just discard things. Um, like think of this in the eyes of a late bloomer, The eyes of a late bloomer. Late bloomer, like, I mean, we use late bloomer in a lot of different ways. Um, I think this word has many varying connotations, but I see like everyone being in on something who are buttering they bath. Ayo. No, yeah, I see that now. The idea of, especially like turning 22, right? This very like late age with the late bloomer kind of situation. Um, sorry, no. Um, yeah, because then it's this feeling of everyone being in on something, and there is a tragedy here. Like there's a real tragedy if we make it like the kid who sees all the other kids getting crushes and just doesn't get it until they finally do. Yeah, and then it's like everyone's in on this thing. Everyone's in on this holy liturgic thing. This buttery, tasty experience that I don't get to be in on, right? And then it creates this like reinforced, I mean, this ostracization, and then this sort of fear, tentatively trying the thing. I mean, we can even say, right, bit boiled body, right? Um, tasted terrific, too terrific, many missed meals. Yeah, yearly yearning, longing, lost lobster. Yeah. No, that actually is a really compelling reading. And thinks of all the time they wasted. Yeah. And that could be for anything as well, with like the idea of wasted time. And looking back, and I think there is a very real tragedy, right? To like, and maybe that's part of why this poem works so well, is for other things this tragedy is quite obvious and real. Lost time, right? The tragedy of never getting an experience back that you could have had um, for whatever reason. And even worse if that thing was taken away from you. Not that this poem delves into that, but you know, we could think about someone being averse to, like you say, like romantic or sexual experience for like an external reason, right? Trauma, and then to look back on all of that missed time, maybe specific missed meals, um, missed connections with people. Um, yeah, is very tragic. And this poem's cool, right? Because it speaks to like a real tragedy, but in a small way and in a funny way. And I think this is what humor is good for, right? It can make things that it can minimize this in its actual sense, right? The tragedy of lost time. And it can make it palatable, and it can make this easier to cope with and laugh off. Maybe it's because I missed my prom, so it just hit that part of my brain. I mean, it's a really great reading. Uh, the other day, so while I was in, like my trip was in California, that I was gone for more than a week, and I went to the ocean with my dad and my grandma. Uh, Toward the end of the trip, and something about the ocean and like the color and the day brought back this memory that was like buried in my brain, where like I was in like middle school, and I had this super close friend, and we had gone with a bunch of friends out to the beach, and we were like sort of swimming out far into the ocean, and it was just me and him, and it recalled this feeling of that day that I feel like I can't help but associate with like love and like a childish like crush. Um, but that's something I don't think I would have understood at the time, because I was very like repressed in my like being like gay, or whatever queer I am, non-binary and pansexual or something, right? And to realize, like, it like hit me like this intense tragedy of like, I wonder what that experience could have been if that wasn't pushed down, if that wasn't repressed, if that wasn't distant. Um, a weird, this kind of, you know, mourning something that I had missed. What if I had been expressing myself as myself, being myself as myself before I was, in my case, 19 and probably really 21? My turn to make a whimsical poem sad. Yeah, but that's interpretation, right? But it's cool because the poem itself is still whimsical. You can't unwhimsical this poem. It's incredibly funny. It's incredibly light, but it can prompt sadness. Um, and that's a cool thing about art. And that's just like how being a person is you can see something whimsical and it can make you sad, right? I can see the beauty of the ocean and it can remind me of like love that I never got to experience. It's like, shit. That's brutal. Okay. Well, I'm glad I entertained your little reading into it a little more deeply. Um, that's a really, really nice additional layer to this poem, right? And that's what time and that's what attention and that's what patience with a poem does. Um, is you can find more, right? I didn't delight in lobster. It's hard to read it as fun now. Seeing several, topping tarped tables, family function food. Often offered, scarlet shelled sustenance soon sunk, butter bath. Decisively declined, bug binge. Liking liturgical lobster least. Turned 22, tentatively tried. Cracked claws, bit boiled body, tasted terrific. Too terrific. Many missed meals. My mind mourns. Melancholy. Yearly yearning. Longing. Lost. Lobster. Yeah, and I mean you could almost insert love here, right? Longing, lost love. I get longing, lost lobster, right? And it does bring it back to funny at the end, right? Because we say lobster at the start and the title, and then like we say lobster in the middle, but then we traverse all of this space where it very much could be this love thing, right? And it can get kind of actually heavy, and then you sort of lift it back out at the end as it's like funny, it's lobster. So I like that reading of the poem because it adds that layer and it adds that turn, and it kind of makes the funny more funny but in a different way, right? um so many lines. Yeah. This is what intellectualism looks like, scribbling in colors. Okay. Any other questions about this poem? Me not liking lobsters isn't just a phase, Mom. It's not a phase. I don't like lobsters. Man, that's deep. um, but it kind of is. Fuck. It feels so silly. No, this poem's great. This poem's awesome. I definitely rewatching this VOD later. Hell yeah. Um, was there a choice between liturgic and liturgical, or do you just wing it? Liturgic sounded better. Yeah, I think liturgic has a better, and like liking liturgic lobster least, right? Liturgic has that sharp kind of end. Yeah, one reading I had was the feeling when you confess to your crush on the last day you'll ever see each other, um, but then they say, like you too. Yeah, yeah. No, this poem definitely reminds me of like people I didn't ask to dance. um, yeah, it works really well. And I think that's the reading, like that's part of the reading thing is you can just read it as funny and it's funny. But then if you read it as sort of heavy, then it becomes sad funny. And I think that works for the poem in a different way. Not necessarily better or worse, just different. I ruined it, but in a good way. Yeah, yeah. Ruined is a strong word. You just changed it, you know. It's so cool that you also like can't unsee new perspectives. This is a really curious thing about analysis that thanks for reading. I need to go sell oxygen now. Not a joke, my genuine profession. That's crazy. Furry combat wombat, poet, and professional oxygen salesperson. That's really lovely. It's fascinating to me. This is just like a something that's bugged me for a really long time about analysis, but something that's quite beautiful is that we can't erase new perspectives as humans, as beings, really, right? Like, you can't really do this. Once Nikki in this poem brings up sad, it sort of becomes a thing that can't be unseen. And I think this is why I prefer that people don't explain their poems initially, because whether or not I philosophically acknowledge that interpretation as true or not, and I don't acknowledge it as the only truth, it becomes something, right, the author's POV, that can't be unseen, right? And so you're given a full authoritative interpretation that you sort of cannot distance yourself from anymore. And this is a really curious thing about analysis, but also just about life, right? When we learn new things and we have new experiences, like existence only goes forward. Um, right? Existence only goes on and accumulates experience. And the best we can do is kind of control the experiences that we might have. But at the end of the day, right, we can't get rid of it. Um, and we probably can't even control it. So maybe then we as humans, as perceivers, should just be thinking about, you know, how much new perspective on life and existence and how much vivid experience we can accumulate. Um, which is then the thing with poetry, right? Keep reading it, keep sharing, keep talking to people about poetry, keep opening it up to new perspectives. And this is something that's really something I never expected would have happened analyzing poetry on Twitch. Like, I always analyzed poetry on my own, and I didn't think about the implication of like chat, right, providing new perspectives. And when you collectively analyze something, right, you make it more vivid in your own analysis, but then you make it like exponentially more vivid and more meaningful as you accumulate new perspectives and ideas, and it becomes more like truly human. It becomes like this communal work of art by the shared experience of it. I think that's really cool. I also think it's funny that I'm talking about this and y'all are talking about the Lorax in chat. Isn't selling oxygen what the bad guy in the Lorax does? I think so, right? Oh, then should I not have given context behind my story submission? I mean, like, when it's like Warhammer, right? Um, when it's Warhammer, like I don't understand like the lore, context can be helpful, right? If not having something impairs my reading of a work, I'd like to know. It's like getting the definition of Hamal, the star, from Nikki, right? Without it, the poem makes less sense and has less meaning. So there's an interesting line there where, like, there are some experiences and some perspectives that are necessary to open up other perspectives. But then some perspectives have a way of closing off the possibility of others. And that's very curious. Oh, so if I went back to Nikki's poem just now and impulsively thought, who up capturing all your edges with they finger and thumb? That's just a new perspective and not objectively worsening my experiences. Yeah, it's just a new perspective is that, yeah, capturing your edges with finger and thumb is an innuendous statement. Beautiful, too. Beautiful. Yeah. um, and a valid interpretation of the work. All right. I think that's all for this one. This is actually really curious to me. This idea of never being able to delete things. Um, anyway, I think this has implications on like how to live your life as a person, like philosophically. Like if you cannot revise the experiences you have and experiences open yourself to new perspectives and new ways of seeing the world, I think there's like a implication to experience as much of life as possible and accumulate varied experience in the same way that accumulating varied experience makes a poem more itself, um, and speak more as itself. Unsure though. Here's I didn't delight in lobster. Seeing several topping tarped tables, family function food, often offered scarlet shelled sustenance soon sunk butter bath, decisively declined bug binge, liking liturgic lobster least. Turned 22. Tentatively tried. Cracked claws, bit, boiled, body. Tasted terrific. Too terrific. Many missed meals, my mind mourns, melancholic. Melancholy, yearly, yearning, longing, lost. Lobster. I didn't delight in lobster by Furry Combat Wombat. It can really get sad, really sad at the end, and then you just say lobster, and it's funny again because you just get this buggy red guy with claws, and it totally like diffuses the poem. I love that work. That's really really smart. Really 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 good writing. Thank you, Wombat, for submitting, and thank you, Nikki, for submitting before. I think that's all for today, for readings. Um, but yeah, thank you, Wombat. That was really lovely. Always an incredible honor to be able to read people's work, to share it with others. Thank you for everyone offering your inputs. That poem wouldn't be what it is for me without Nikki's input and thought, or anyone else's, on that poem, right? So, really lovely. Fair, what about knowing the context they were written in? Like how my first three stories being prologues for a campaign. I think that's fine, and that helped us analyze them. It's also a little different with prose and poetry. A little bit more of that guidance helps me with prose because I'm worse at analyzing it. So it's really not a big deal, Alekman. You didn't like do anything wrong. Uh, And I enjoyed reading all of your prose when I read it, and it was great, and I think it was helpful to use. So no need for fretting. Anyway, yeah, that's all for stream. Again, thanks for the writings, and many thanks to everyone for watching, for giving me your time. Because time is like the most valuable thing that we have. And so for other people to use their time for something of my creation is something I honor and appreciate and am immensely grateful for. So thank you all for watching, truly, in like a philosophical manner. And welcome back. Glad you are here. I am so happy to be back to streaming Messier. It is so lovely and fun. I love to read everyone's work. I love to share this space of poetry with so many people and so many wonderful, brilliant writers. And yeah, that's pretty cool. Thanks for watching. Oh, keep making art you love, and keep finding beauty in the world. See you next time on Wednesday.
Thank you.